Everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Build a Modern B2B Data Foundation with ZoomInfo Data as a Service. Before we jump ahead, I should mention the safe harbor statement. If you are making any purchases, please do make sure you're doing it based on existing functionality and product and not based on any forward-looking statements we may make in this presentation. I do also want to mention that you can always come back and refer to this webinar, which will be available on demand in the future as well. My name is Shruti Panikar, and I am a principal product marketer at ZoomInfo. I work on our data as a service offering, and I'm very excited to have with me Amit Rai, who's a VP Enterprise Product and Sales, and really leads our data as a service offering and has been doing this for a while now. So I can't think of a better person to really talk about ZoomInfo data as a service today, and what value data as a service on a whole can bring to an organization. So in terms of what we'll cover, I definitely like to set the context for organizations today in terms of customer data. What are some of the data challenges that all organizations face? Dive into just understanding what data as a service is in general, and how do we actually use it to go from raw data to an engagement-ready data set and actually be able to activate it. And hopefully that'll give us some context into what ZoomInfo Data as a Service does, all the different products and services that are a part of this before diving into some use cases which will showcase the art of the possible. Given that, I just want to set some context before we dive in. In this day and age, we're really talking about the everywhere customer or the connected customer, right? A customer is not just talking to us on the phone. They're probably listening to a podcast somewhere. They're on a webinar somewhere. They're interacting with us through so many systems and applications. It becomes very important to be able to really identify this customer across all our channels, right? And not just that, we want to be able to get more information on this customer, see if they're a good fit, right? Check to see what their intent is, whether there are any recent news scoops that, showcases a particular trigger that we should act upon. We want to be able to then route them to the right rep or the right, object and engage with them with a personalized message at the right time. And, if all goes well, we want to go find more customers like the good ones, right? So these are just some of the activities that we really need to be able to do in order to, capitalize on the customer data that we have. And I would say the thread that ties everything together, of course, is, comprehensive and high quality data that is orchestrated in a way that, you can actually use it properly. I'd like to stop here and just, Amit, is there anything you'd like to add here? You think, this is making sense, and anything from the field that you're seeing that you'd like to share here?
Thank you, Shruti. It's always great to discuss with you about these DaaS challenges. And I think you are spot on in terms of what you are covering here, because I can clearly see a pattern from the fields, which is identification of your customers across channels where you need good data. Get more information for the customer, which is you need to enrich data. Check if they are good fit or not. That's where you come into now predictive analytics of the world. Combine that together with intent or scopes. Now that's more like getting the data to the field, routing them to the right rep or activate personalized message. Again, now you are getting into the data management layer and find more customers that looks like the good ones. Again, lookalike modeling. So this is pretty good. Like, I think you have captured most of the things that we see on the field. And there are a lot of point solutions that actually work across these different areas. So this is pretty good. And it's spot on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But yeah, and I think I think with what we'll talk about soon as well, right? The idea is to be able to look at this holistically, and is there a way to actually bring these pieces together so that we can actually activate it? So you would think, well, we know what the solution is, that this might be an easy challenge or problem to solve, but of course, as we've seen, that's not always the case. And organizations are just continuing to deal with all kinds of data challenges, right? Incomplete, inaccurate, inconsistent data, data that's siloed in disconnected systems, And of course, I also want to talk about this idea of, well, we have a lot of data, like a lot of organizations have a lot of first-party data, but they might not necessarily have, all the data in the world that's relevant to what they're trying to do. And what I mean by that is, do they know all the companies that they should really go after? Probably not, right? So there's also an element of of lack of data, right, which organizations deal with, or lack of good quality data. And I want to make a distinction with also just intelligence, like as a subtle difference from just data. Data is just data. You also want to be able to start making sense of it and doing something with it. So that will involve, really getting insights, really looking at sort of forward-looking sort of analysis and doing that sort of work. And that's also something that I think organizations are trying to make that change, but it's not an easy sort of switch. And of course, there's this, problem with mismanaged routing, right? You have data, but you want to be able to do something with it and turn it and put it into the right systems or the right people. And that's definitely a challenge. And there's a lot of data points, that support this. And the problem with this, of course, is just it's expensive, right? Not being able to deal with data in the right way, not being able to really build a proper data strategy, of course, is super expensive. Now, Amit, I as an expert here in some, you've been seeing this and working with this for a long time through our customers. I'd love to hear sort of, where do you think they should start? Right, there are a lot of problems here, and what should they prioritize? And you had an interesting conversation with Kirsten from Snowflake the other day on this very topic in a lot of detail, and I thought there were some good insights there that I would love for us to share here as well. Right, obviously there are a lot of problems here. Where would you start, and how would you sort of navigate this?
Yeah, Shruti, again, another great question. So if you think about all these challenges that you have listed here are omnipresent. Almost like, it's not almost 100% of the customers and the prospects that I have spoken in the last 1 year itself, which is close to 2,000. I've seen 100% of the time that they fall into one of these 4 buckets. 5 years ago, there was not enough B2B data maturity, if you will, and everyone was trying to move towards AI, predictive modeling, things like that, without realizing that the underlying basic B2B data was not there. So essentially what happened is that everyone used to start with thinking about that, oh, we have lack of data intelligence problem. So that's like 5 years ago. But if you ask me where we see that the good ones, if you will, like who have now got it, I would highly recommend to folks to focus on the incomplete, inaccurate, and inconsistent data, because most of our customers already are sitting on a wealth of lot of pretty good first-party data. However, it's very inconsistent, it's not standardized, it's not normalized, it is still being tied using some of these traditional data vendors that's out there. And so what happens is that when they acquire data, because typically you are trying to acquire data through third-party data providers, you don't have a complete view of like what are the inconsistencies, what's the bad data. So once you have bad data, even if you try to bring in good data, it gets mixed into that. So it relates to merge problem and things like that. So I would, I would highly recommend our customers, because that's what I've seen, that incomplete, inaccurate, and inconsistent data is the part where you start with, because that gives you gap analysis that can help you to figure out when you are thinking about multi-vendor data strategy, what are the different vendors that you should be thinking about. Once you've figured that out and you have the data strategy, then the second step is essentially bringing siloed data in disconnected systems together. So this is also a pretty common problem, which is in large organizations, you have multiple system of records, if you will. And now how do you connect all those system of records together so that you can have like some insights and segmentations and things like that? Those two are like what I consider the biggest problem that builds the kind of the data foundation layer. Once you figure those two things out, then I think lack of data intelligence becomes advanced, like in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you will, data hierarchy of needs. That's where now you get into how do I supplement and add more columns or attributes to my data layer. And then obviously, once you have solved these three problems, then you should be thinking about, okay, now let's route it to the right seller so that it gets routed to the right people. So that would be my suggestion.
100%. So look like I ordered it the right way. But what I found interesting was that, people tend to run to, let's do these advanced analysis and let's figure out modeling and scoring and all these other things without actually having your foundation set and clean and accurate and comprehensive. And so I think that's the mistake we need to stop following, like start building from the bottom and go up. Very cool.
I mean, go back to Udacity and some of these free courses, like when they are teaching in schools now, you will see that now data engineering is becoming mainstream, whereas 3 years ago, 4 years ago, everyone was only talking about data science, predictive modeling. So there is a shift now, Shruti, where everyone now understands, specifically in the B2B world, where you need to focus a lot on the data engineering part, building the data, because it's boring, but it's the most important part. It's the raw material that can fuel your AI, machine learning, predictive modeling efforts, if you will.
Absolutely. All right. So given this, right, I want to start talking about a way to solve these problems, right, and how either an organization can do it themselves or how they can tap into an expert, right, who can help you with solving many of these things. So I actually, went around digging for, what is a good description or a definition for data as a service, right, from the experts in the market. And this is something that I found that actually, Gartner says, right? And I found it interesting because when you hear the term data as a service, you think, oh, just here's the data and somebody's going to just give me data and then I'm just going to use it, right? But really, it has to be more than that. And that's what we see here. So this talks about really, not only getting or sharing meaningful data assets, right, with people, but then it goes beyond to talk about things like filtering, aggregation, contextualizing with external sources, enrichment, curation, aggregation, and analysis, right? So really, they're defining it as a design approach to leverage data, but not just leverage, data, raw data. You can't do much with it, right? But actually enrich it, contextualize it, compose it, right, and then actually share it. So Amit, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Are you, in agreement with this description? Anything you'd add or delete, and then we can move forward into, what we offer.
Yeah, Shruti, that you have done a fantastic job here at evangelizing data as a service definition, because even when I started 1 year ago at ZoomInfo, data as a service was synonym with just a massive flat file of data. Here is the data. So I really like this definition, because that we have always been talking about data as a service as a holistic discipline, which I think it's pretty when you think about collect, compose, share, which is not only collection of the data, but composing is where you bring in ETL processes, waterfall, things like that, and then sharing with the right stakeholders, like activation of the data. So the entire discipline, I really like this definition, and I know you have done a lot of effort to finding something that we kind of agree, because that's what we see from a lot of our customers, and that's why it makes sense where they think it like a whole complete discipline rather than just point solution. So this makes perfect sense to me.
100%, and I think. A call out here is, right, yeah, of course, this is an approach that an organization can try to figure themselves, right? But of course, that's not a trivial problem to solve. And this is where you could really start tapping into an external data as a service provider, right? So there's definitely a path here from just, first party data that you have to engagement ready data that can be activated. Amit, I'd love for you to just walk us through that path and talk a little bit more about the steps that are needed and dive in a little bit more into this journey, if you will.
Yeah. So Shruti, again, going back to what we discussed, the problem statements, the 4 buckets that you talked about. So the step number 1 was how can we acquire like data assets that we have from multiple data vendors? So when you're thinking about, the reason I keep talking about multi-vendor data strategies, because you cannot find a vendor where their approach works like globally for everything. So you have to take into consideration like geos. You have to take into consideration what are the attributes that you are thinking about. I mean, specifically talking about the third-party data, you have to figure out what are the um, uh, uh, like there are niche data providers, what are the gaps that you have. So that's the acquire phase, which is essentially you need to have a holistic understanding of where we are, like benchmarking and figuring out your multi-vendor data strategy and how you can tie those multiple different data points together. So that's the acquire phase. Once you have figured that out, then this next step is enrich phase. There you have to think about how do we, what are the system of records that you have that are going to bring the most ROI? Because when you don't think in that way, it becomes pretty hard for organizations and folks to kind of come up with an ROI metrics, which is when I'm getting all this data, how is it helping me in making business decisions? So that's where like enrich phase is pretty important, which is what are the system of records that are very important. And that's why you see the new disciplines like revenue operations are coming into existence now, as opposed to MDM and IT only in the past. Cleanse, analyze are again like part of that like entire journey, if you will. So once you have acquired the data, you have figured out what are the system of records that you need to enrich, you will find that cleansing of the data, because those system of records have already a lot of data in there. How do you standardize, normalize, cleanse it, analyze it, so that like the gaps you can fill in, you don't override with the third-party data that you have figured out. So that's that particular part. And then if you move up, like again, now what it assumes is that you have acquired, you have enriched, you have cleansed, you have analyzed the data. Now it's time to activate. And so when I think about activation, predictive modeling on top of that data layer, and then routing, so that at the end of the day, now you give it to the salesperson or a marketing person to activate that data. So that's how I think about like steps, which is essentially, and this is like a cyclical process, because once it goes to the field, you get feedback that should again go back into the data access layer, and then it's like orchestration, so more like a circular loop, if you will.
I realize I should have brought the arrow back down, but definitely very helpful in really thinking through, the steps and the processes that need to happen. And it sounds like to me, you could sort of club this into two layers, right? Really data access on one side and data management on the other side. And you need both, and you need these to work together in order to actually, help get to that engagement ready state. All right. So given this, I'd love for Amit, for you to walk us through, now how, ZoomInfo Data as a Service helps with this, right? Helps with this paradigm. And would love for you to walk us through that.
Yeah, so this is the part which is pretty exciting for me, Shruti, because 1 year ago, there was no definition for ZoomInfo Data as a Service. And now we already had a lot of assets, and ZoomInfo continues to acquire more assets that helps us to visualize these two layers, if you will, like logical layers. So if you think about ZoomInfo as a company, in the last 3 years, we've acquired 10 or more companies, and primarily they were in the data space. And so the reason they did that is because Henry's vision of building a modern go-to-market platform. What is modern about it? It is the only company on planet Earth, a GTM platform that is built on the data access layer. So it's an intelligent or kind of a go-to-market platform. So when you think about the data access layer, like through the several acquisitions of other companies like Firmographics, Hierarchy, Technographics, Intent, Scoops, Locations, Contacts, I mean, ZoomInfo literally acquired the leaders in each of these areas to build one holistic, like what we call the foundational data layer. And of course, the advanced attributes that allows our customers where they can now rely on ZoomInfo, specifically for sales and marketing use case as a foundational database. Additionally, now we realize, like as I've said in the past, that like these modern approaches may not work like globally, like because the methods that we have built in, Like it's almost like a search engine for B2B. It's a Google for B2B. That's what we have built. So there are like NLP related challenges that we may have, let's say like Africa or Japan or India, where we are not there yet. So that's why you can actually have other third-party data vendors that can fill in the gaps. And so that's the data access layer where ZoomInfo actually allows our customers to have the access to the data layer. And we have like core capabilities. Now, the second part is, as we talked about, which is the data management layer. So recently we acquired a company called Ringlead, who are the leaders in the data orchestration space. So if you think about now you have all the data, they are almost like a Switzerland of data, which is they are agnostic to any data providers, and they can orchestrate the data that you have already acquired, the third-party data, and push it into the system of records. Specifically, I'm talking about CRMs of the world, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, and the marketing automation systems like HubSpot, Marketo, Eloqua, things like that. So once you have the data access layer, how do you cleanse those system of records that we talked about? So cleanse, route, form complete, multi-vendor enrich, like those are some of the products. Additionally, we have APIs, webhooks, our data services team, and then modeling and scoring capabilities that actually helps you to kind of activate this data, combine first-party data, third-party data together, automate it, push it into all those system of records. And that's the kind of a framework, if you will, and ZoomInfo Data as a Service product suite that we have built. That's how we think about it today, which is data access layer, supplement your data strategy, and data management layer, which is now activate the data, combine it, and make it operational.
I love that. And really, we have things to support that entire path, right? And it's very flexible in terms of, what you can do with it. And we work with our customers' workflows and systems, right? So we really integrate well into their ecosystems and also really their overall data strategy. And I think, that level of flexibility and customizability and also ease of use, right? Like the Ringlead products are just so intuitive and codeless that you can actually do this so fast. And of course, it's all backed by a really solid data foundation. Love to see this. And I've loved seeing this journey as well, in the time I've been here, and we've grown leaps and bounds just in the 5-6 months that I've been here, and we're continuing to invest in this. Given this, Amit, would you walk us through some use cases of customers who leverage some of these some of these components or all of these components, and in order to actually drive their go-to-market success?
Yeah. So I think matching and enrichment is a pretty common use case. Identity resolution is a very common use case for large financial institutions where they have traditionally they have relied on traditional data provider for a very, very long time. Now, when they look at like the quality of data that they can get using third-party data providers like us, so essentially the data science, data analytics team through Snowflake, because our data is available to, like we have a partnership with Snowflake. So so this is one example where Capital One of our customers, they were actually, they are also using Snowflake, where they build their master data foundation on top of the ZoomInfo core firmographics data. The reason I really like this use case is because this data is not only just being utilized by the data science and data analytics team for predictions and analytics, but also that data is being activated. So now they are also, the sellers are users of our core Dozy platform, where they are able to utilize some of the core functionalities that we have. The data is connected to the front users, if you will. So all the predictive analytics and everything that the data science and data analytics team do, they ultimately recommend the leads to the sellers, and then sellers are able to do the prospecting based on the Dozy platform that we have, which is a web app like LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So that's one example. The core value proposition there was that before ZoomInfo, when they were using these traditional data providers, their match rates, especially for SMB, like when I say SMB, I'm talking about $0 to $20 million revenue range, was subpar, like in low 30%-ish kind of thing. Whereas when they started utilizing ZoomInfo, that went up significantly, close to 70-80% with high quality. So again, matching and enrichment is the primary use case. You'll see the similar kind of pattern with some other examples that you have seen, you have listed here, which is Wayfair and FedEx. Again, similar kind of challenges, especially when business is small. So it all starts with matching and enrichment. For FedEx, I wanted to call out was predictive analytics, because they have a pretty large data science team. And so, and a pretty solid data science team. What they were lacking was, again, like this matching and enrichment of good data. But we have also automated large-scale logistic regression models where they are able to build lookalike model based on where they have seen success in the past. And that data is being used now by, again, like front sellers, where when we recommend a lead, it goes to the seller. So there we are also utilizing, in addition to matching and enrichment, modeling and analytics. And then Wayfair is a great example where, like we all know Wayfair, like they have a lot of consumers visiting the website. So their use case was, how do we kind of differentiate between B2B versus B2C? And so that's, again, an example of matching and enrichment close to real-time matching and figuring out like what are the leads, what's B2B, what's B2C. So again, you will see the common theme is, again, it's all based on the foundational data. It's based on our matching algorithm and some of the advancements that we have done there in terms of reference data set, where we use the entire World Wide Web as a reference data set. And so that all helps us in better matching, better enrichment. And then on top of it, our regression modeling automation allows our customers to build pretty good lookalike modeling close to almost like real time. We can do it in 15 minutes as opposed to 6 months or 1 year to build a model.
That's amazing. And thanks for sharing that. And I just want to say, of course, I picked a couple here. We have thousands of customers leveraging our DaaS suite in many different ways, right? I'll share some content for those of you listening in that dives into more use cases, so you can take a look at it and just see, how you can actually start helping your data strategy using data as a service. So given that, Amit, I'd love for us to, also touch a little bit on, why us, right? What makes us different, and what are some of the components that might be relevant for our audience? Now, of course, I can say a couple of things, right? I mean, in terms of just data, right, we're unparalleled or unmatched, if you will, right? I mean, these are just some numbers I pulled up, right? Everything from like 106 million businesses globally. And if you look at it at the location level, you're looking at 167 million companies or company locations, 200 firmographic data attributes. Of course, our contact data is well known for, right, 140 million. And I'm sure this number has gone up from the last time I pulled it up. And also where a lot of it is actually verified, right? So, but we go beyond, right? It's not just that. We have scoops and real-time streaming intent. And of course, we have technographics and so much more that I haven't even listed here. So these numbers speak for itself. And I think that it's a solid foundation for us, so that's definitely there. But Amit, why I would love for you to dive in a little bit into why we are able to do this in terms of actually having this high quality data set where people don't have to choose between coverage and accuracy. I'd love to hear a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So Shruti, I always give an analogy of like, I'm a big Tesla fan. I have a Tesla now. So when you compare the gas-powered engines versus electric power cars, it's not just about that one, they both are commodity. The energy is very different. So if you think about like, no matter how good your coal is, it's still coal, like in terms of bad energy. Whereas when you think about cars, these electric cars, the innovation is on the battery side, if you will, the lithium-ion battery, like how fast they can charge. So similarly, when you think about the B2B data, we have lived into really dark ages where these traditional vendors have been utilizing old methods. Like how can you have companies in today's world that have survived for 200 years or more? So think about that, like the same methods have been used for a very, very long time. What we have done is essentially if you think about indexing the World Wide Web, using AI and machine learning in conjunction with humans, where humans are very good at training the machines, and machines are able to learn from humans and apply that learnings across the entire data set. So the biggest value proposition is that our ability to do well at scale. So all the numbers that you talked about, you may find that there are few other data vendors who have that kind of coverage, but the quality is pretty missing, like big time. And that's where what makes unique, like if you look at Henry's vision, he's always acquiring companies, not only that they have big data assets, but actually companies that specializes in AI, machine learning, business natural language processing specifically. That's an area where we are focusing most of our effort, which is application of deep learning, business natural language processing, and humans. So we have world's best operations team. If you go back in time, like Discover.org had the world's best operations team. We still have that operations team where they are constantly teaching these machines to apply that quality at scale. So that's what makes it different, and that's what makes it modern, and that's why market is also reacting very positively towards ZoomInfo and the approach that we are taking.
Absolutely. No, thanks for those insights. I think that gives context as to, and it's easy for anybody to tell, hey, look, we have, X number of records, but, the proof is in the pudding. And of course, people can, if you're interested, come talk to us, right? We'll run POCs with you, help you analyze your data, and, and you can take a look for yourself so that it's not just us talking. All right, so the second piece definitely is this idea around really accelerating that end-to-end, B2B data management, right? And we have so many different components now, from just reducing friction by really being in our customers' workflows and systems, and also helping with, and I mentioned this before, right, when it comes to data orchestration, this codeless, intuitive, rules-based system, if you will, and all of this ties into our ZoomInfo go-to-market platform, right? The end-to-end platform, so you don't have to go to multiple places to really go on the journey. So, Amit, I hope I covered that, but love to hear if there's anything else you would add here.
I think you covered it pretty good, Shruti, which is essentially one-stop platform that can help you to build the data foundation layer and orchestrate the data together. And that's what ZoomInfo DaaS is.
Yeah, 100%. And the last thing I definitely want to point out, right, and it's not just a relationship, right? I correct myself, it's not just data products, but it is a relationship, right? We, ZoomInfo as a whole, we have dedicated, customer success at scale, all over the world. We are committed to enablement, communication, so on and so forth. But also taking, DaaS specifically, a lot of our engagements, you actually work with dedicated data delivery managers, right? So somebody who can actually work with you on your data strategy and what you're trying to do. And I think that's something that we're proud of. So it's not just like, oh, here's your data, bye-bye. We actually will work with you on that. And the last thing that I definitely want to touch on is, right, we're, as a company, and this is something that excited me when I joined ZoomInfo, and not to toot our own horn too much, but we're innovating so much, right, on a daily basis, and we're growing so fast, and we're really defining what I'm calling the go-to-market movement. So that's definitely something that I hope people can see, right, in the market, and I hope people want to join us in this journey as we really redefine this space, and be the example, if you will, for how companies can go to market. But yeah, so Amit, I wanted to just end with one last question, if you will, in terms of where is there a good time for companies to start on this journey, or like, oh, they should be a certain size, or they should be certain they should be this at this maturity level, or is there a place for them to start on this journey no matter where they are, and then kind of stack up and add to it as they go along?
Yeah, Shruti, I think data has become such an important part of the go-to-market motion that it's an immediate priority for most of the organizations. What I have seen is, especially when the organizations are large, The good leaders, they think at least 6 months in advance in terms of like planning for the next year, and they start their what I talked about, like data benchmarking and data studies, so that that can inform their growth for the like next year in 6 months in advance. So I'm talking about this for large enterprises. When you are a smaller company, I think you have to always be thinking in terms of how do you continue to grow at a faster pace. So there, again, like you should plan to give yourself at least 3 months time to just in terms of like benchmarking what are your data needs, and once you have done the benchmarking, I think you should make an effort to figure out a way to make it part of the overall budget cycle, if you will, so that you can this can help you to accelerate growth.
No, absolutely. And I think, I wanted to say, right, there's the holistic solution of really tying all these things together, which we can work with you on making that happen. But of course, if you have a specific problem that you're trying to solve, right, we can start there as well, right? Like we have, like, oh, you want to clean up all your stuff in Salesforce, right? Yet we have a wonderful enrichment solution to help you with that. And so really we can work with you on that journey. But yeah, thank you so much, Amit, for walking us through this and having this conversation with me. Thank you all for joining as well. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time. We want to just talk data with you and data management. And that's what gets us excited. So thank you all.
Thank you, Shruti.
Thank you.